like that. So now what I'm going to do is the last part of the project, which is the hardest to explain. I'm going to try and zoom out for you. I'm going to use my magnifying glass and hold down the Alt button at the same time, which is zooming out. What I want to do is I'm going to collect a box over all of my creations and move them to the side. And then I'm going to pull them in one by one. And the reason that I'm doing this is I want to be able to control exactly each piece one at a time and control the composition. Now what I have to the left is really a collection. I have a big group of stuff that's randomly placed and thrown together that has variation and some similarities, which is the shape in most cases. And you'll also notice that I happen to choose a specific color palette. I used all different types of like kind of this pinkish purple to greens and blues. That's it. There's no reds, yellows, or oranges in here, and I did that on purpose. You could choose to do that, but you don't have to. If you want to work with the full rainbow, that's up to you. I find that having color similarities creates unity, and unity is really something that you want to have in every piece. But variety is good too, so if you want to work with a bunch of colors, in this case you can because you're already unified by your shapes. We'll explain more about unity in other projects. Right now, I want to talk about movement. And emphasis. So first of all, I have to create emphasis in my page. So the thing that I place first is going to be my area of emphasis. Emphasis means that it stands out above everything else. So one easy way to do that is to make it quite large compared to the other things. Another way to do it might be that if you go back to your fill here, you'll notice that there's a folder here. The folder has things like patterns and gradients in it. Now you could go to any of these, by the way, but they're mostly just flat colors, just like the colors you have here. But if you go to gradients, you'll see this will pop up. Mine was already up because I already clicked it. And I could just add a gradient to whatever I have selected by clicking that. And you can see that the gradient shows up. Now, as I already mentioned, I have a color coordination going on here. So I wouldn't pick most of the other ones of these, but there's a couple that I might choose. And additionally, I could go to this folder, which is, by the way, the exact same folder, just links you to the same thing. And you could go into one of the other ones, and maybe I'd want to pick other ones here. Or there's also ones that are round, okay, and that'll like make a different effect. So those are things you can do to add emphasis to your main part here. I think I like that one the best. All right, additionally, in patterns, there's some other cool patterns, so I might go to like one of these random folders inside patterns and see if I have one that works with my color scheme. Okay, so that one does kind of work. All right, so I'm going to go back to the fade because I liked it better. So now I have my area of emphasis established. This is the thing that I want to stand out the most. Now I'm going to create movement by bringing in my other images, and it's not too late to make changes to them. You could change them as you bring them in. And let's see. And you're going to create something for the eye to follow through the page. So I'm going to do one example of this. It's not the only way you could do it, but I don't want you to have to sit here and watch me place every item. So why don't you come back in a few minutes and see where I'm at. Okay, so now I have all my pieces in, and you can see that some of them go off the page, which is okay. However, it's important for you to know as the artist that this is the only part of the project that would show if you were to if I were to hang it up on the wall. So the next thing I'm going to do is assess. I'm going to look for areas that stand out, and in some cases that'll be good, and in some cases it won't be. We know that we want this area to stand out the most. So if there's competition to that, we might want to change things. This is the next biggest object, so I'm going to see that while I'm assessing and maybe change it a little bit. That also might require me to bring in a couple more new shapes. Now I have all the shapes here, so all I have to do is use my duplication technique and change something about it as I go. So for example, I'm going to make this one lighter blue. And as I'm assessing, I also might notice that, gee, there sure are a lot of blues here. So I might try and change that up. This is probably going to be the one that's going to make the most drastic change because it's in the middle of them. So I'm going to just give that a little green look. There you go. I still need, like, I see a breakage here, so I'm going to try and fix that breakage by adding a couple more shapes in there. So now I have a clear, hopefully it's clear, you guys can tell me. It looks like everything is pressing the viewer to follow this little loop here and go this way. Now, is that the only way I could have solved the problem? No, it's not. In fact, what I'm going to do is just to show you, you don't have to do this. I'm going to move my entire drawing over, and I'm going to come up with something completely different and just show you, and we could talk about movement a little bit more. I'll admit that this solution is a little bit more boring, but it does have movement. We have clear lines that we're expecting, or columns, that we're expecting the viewer to follow, and I'm like readjusting the line so it's more clear. But there is still an area of emphasis, and the viewer is expected to go through the lines to find it. I'm going to move this over for a moment, and I'm going to move this back into place. You can see that I went out of my way not to let things overlap in my image. Really, that's not a sign of great composition. It would be more interesting if things, crashed over each other. So for example, if I were really want to do my best work on this project, I would probably have even more of these things. So I might click a couple more duplicates and shrink them and place them in different places. When I'm placing them in other places, I don't need to be careful not to overlap them. Sometimes overlapping makes things interesting and creates a little bit more variation. You can see that when I had this over here, it appeared over the other purple, I'm going to call that a squiggle. But when I put it over here by the blue one, it goes underneath it. This is similar to the layers in Photoshop, except that we don't have a bar that shows us the layers. So I just want to show you how to move something back and forth in your layers in Illustrator. And by the way, on your sidebar, the answer is right there. But I'm going to show you the slightly, the way that you click to it. So if I have an object selected and I wanted to move forward in space, I could bring it to the front or bring it forward. I can tell you right now, each of these are on a different layer. So if I bring it forward, it could take 100 clicks to get above this other object. So I'm just going to bring it to the front. So there you go. It's now above that blue instead. Now if I wanted to go behind it, again, or if I decided that I wanted the blue to come forward, I could go to the blue and object arrange bring to front, or I could select the purple thing and object arrange bring to back, or send to back. There are key commands also on your sidebar, so if you want, you can look at those key commands, or if you find it easier to just select something, go to object arrange and go here, you can certainly do that as well. Alright, I'm going to step back to where we were. So again, you want to create movement in your piece. So the movement is happening here. You want to create variation. You can see that I have a strong variety of different shapes and colors here. Well, they're unified in the fact that they're all similar shapes, but they're different and varied in the way that they're all different colors and outlines, etc. And you have an area of emphasis, which means that it stands out most on the page. I just wanted to show you how to add color to your background of your project, because things more or less look better when they're not just on white. It'll look more complete to do this. So I'm going to show you how to add a background. We're going to take our pen tool, our favorite tool in Illustrator, also the hardest one to use, and we're just going to click, click, click over the piece, over the artboard perimeter, and make sure that we seal our shape. Now you're like, Mr. Cier, I can't see my entire project now. So you're just going to go to Object, Arrange, and Send to Back. Now this is a very dark color, so I don't like the contrast that provides. It's a little bit more than I wanted to go. So maybe a light color might be a better idea. Now if one of my shapes are lost because the color is too similar, I'm just going to go to that shape and change it. But remember that you can also, if you don't like the solid colors, check out those. I would suggest not going to patterns for the background because they'll make it look too full, but maybe going to some of the gradients could end up something nice as the background. Last thing that we're going to do in this project, like every project, is make sure that we add our name, and we're also going to make sure that it's not in Myriad Pro because Mr. Cier hates Myriad Pro. It's just so boring. So go to your fonts, under type font, choose something interesting, or at least something other than Myriad Pro that people can read. And we're going to, I'm just going to highlight that to make it larger. I don't want to make it so huge that it takes over my project. That's a little bit much. Maybe this. Because it's not about my name, it's about the project. I'm just the artist. So putting my name small and right over here in the corner will do. So that's another way that you could still show emphasis and movement. Is it as strong a composition as this one? I personally would say no. The composition of this other one that I have here is far more interesting. But I just wanted to show you that there's lots of different things you could come up with. And I'm also going to show you some examples right now of student work. Okay, so here we have two very different ways to show movement. This person has a clear path that we follow, and this person does have a clear path too, but they have different compositions. You can see this person used color and fades and also stroke colors to create variety, and then lands on the large and patterned, the only large and patterned one of this project. So you can see that this one definitely creates clear emphasis by having both a pattern and a large heart in that case. On this one, this person creates another clear path and it goes directly to this one. I can see that they did a lot of work on this specific one, and they also made it quite large, and it's pink among many blue ones. Now there are other pink ones here, but the way that they created emphasis is by having a pink one surrounded by blue ones, having it large, and having a lot of work done on it using different tools. I'm going to bring up a couple more for us. Here we have two very different ways to create movement. Whoops. One person chose to create columns and rows of their arrow-like shape, and the one complaint I have about this is this doesn't suit our current rules. I'm not sure what the rules I taught were back then, but this doesn't suit our rules of being a closed shape. You can see that if I highlight the path here, that it's not closed in two places, and also it intersects itself, which is basically against our rules. However, they do show a different way to have a movement. The movement is going up and to the right, just like the arrows are pointing us, but this one is emphasized by the fact that it's offset from the rest. It's facing a different, like it has a different rotation, and it also has a very distinct stroke. Here we have all these things moving down, and maybe it would have been slightly better to just turn these a little bit more so that the tails are going up, so it looks like it's really like falling downward. But this still works. We're still going down, and then he has a lot of variety using different fades, and then he has a large emphasized one with a very big round fade, so or radial gradient. So that's a great way to show movement and emphasis on his. Okay, so this one here, we have the direction and movement obviously following the arrow that he made out of his objects. The problem is that this is probably the more emphasized one because it's larger, but it's arguable that this one stands out because the different things all go to it. So that's kind of a problem with his emphasis. He should really maybe have moved this over here and moved this down here. Also, the light color over this area, or this gold color, would probably work better and stand out more here, which would also help his emphasis. All right, so I just wanted to show you how backgrounds will look in both cases. However, you're only responsible for one artboard in this project. So unless you happen to be done early and want to make a second composition to see which one is better, I'm going to just go ahead and delete all this and put this in my project right here. And I'm going to stick a fork in it and call this project done. So I hope you enjoyed this project. This is the end of it. So if you hated the pen tool, you'll be glad. But if you didn't, hopefully you learned that you could draw in the computer, sometimes even better than what you could draw by hand.